Good evening, everyone. This is the planning board meeting.
Really?
Planning board meeting for December 20th, 2022. First of all, I'm going to introduce the planning board members. Usually over at my extreme left is Doug Breskin. Doug is
He's here.
out because of illness, but is appearing remotely. And you can see him, right, Tavis?
I can.
And Doug, can you hear us?
Yes.
You're saying yes? Okay, I didn't hear that.
Cannot hear him.
His mic's off.
Are we gonna?
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next to where used to be Doug's seat is Von Dugan, then Peter Goodwin. Mike Hodder is the vice chairman of the planning board, and to my right, John Thurston, Brad Harriman, the representative for the Board of Selectmen, and Julie Jacobs, who is the alternate, but will be sitting on the two public hearings of the items continued. So Peter will not participate, but he can ask questions, but you will be the voting member, Julie. Okay. All right. So because Doug is not in the room, we will be taking roll call votes for everything that we vote on. Okay. Just a few things I wanted to say before I got started. This public hearing is a forum where all of us need to remember we're among friends and neighbors. This is not the place for any negativity. Instead, it is a place to ask questions, make statements about the ordinance, and to respect the process. The planning board has been diligent working on these proposals and are well aware that some people have concerns about the multifamily section. But as the planning board, we feel it is important to bring these issues to the public for their vote. Among the issues discussed on December 6th was the change of the granting of a special exception by ZBA to a review of a site plan by the planning board. The criteria used for the special exception and site plan are similar. Both require a public hearing. The planning board, when reviewing a site plan, looks at the site suitability, development standards, setbacks, coverage, protection of wetlands, lighting, and neighborhood integrity, parking, stormwater regulations. Yes, the planning board can grant waivers, but the waivers have to be granted with justification. A site plan review is also required for multifamily. It seems that the planning board is in a good position to take on this task. The change to the multifamily ordinance to incorporate these changes in each zoning district. We've talked about this and we have checked this with our attorney. She agrees with this approach. We've also removed the special exception for village residential district. However, there will still be a site plan review. The density is determined at 2 units per acre, except for the central business district in Wolfeboro Falls, and that's 6 units per acre are allowed. No density changes are proposed. These are the same as are now in the regulations. I just wanted to mention about the sewer and water. In January of 2022, I had a discussion with Dave Ford. He indicated that Once the sewer and water study was complete, he would discuss the issue with the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. I reported back to the Planning Board after this discussion. In February, at the request of the Planning Board, we asked to speak about this density issue with the Board of Selectmen. After again requesting a meeting, after not hearing from them and again requesting a meeting, this issue was placed on the Board of Selectmen discussion items. This was, at the time, the Board of Selectmen felt that we really couldn't, they wouldn't talk to the Planning Board until they had the study for the water and sewer. At that time, the Planning Board decided not to deal with density. The exception was for ADUs, which some may think is adding to the density issue, but it is not. The ADUs was granted by a state statute, and they're allowed in all residential areas. Okay, I just want to read the item into the record now. The first one is amending, and this was continued from December 6th, amending 175-71 Village Residential, 175-81 Residential, and 175-86 General Residential, 175-106 Bay Street Limited Business District, 175-96 Pine Hill Development District, 175-100 South Wolfeboro Limited Business District, 175-121 Center Street, Route 28 Mixed Use Business District, 175-91 Commercial District, C1, and that's CB, that's the Central Business District. 175-116 Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District, each to have multifamily language added as permitted uses, language amended and moved from 175-143 through 145, multifamily dwellings respectively. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Tavis so he can discuss the issue and discuss any changes that were made.
Well, the only changes that were made were in response to Roger Murray's comments specific to the conversions and the references to all districts being, where conversions are proposed, basing that on the density and parking requirements of the section. I also clarified the language in the parking to refer to the parking regulations and the site plan regulations. Otherwise, the reference to parking regulations refers back to itself. And those are the only changes since the last reading.
Okay. Any planning board questions? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Please remember that it was only a couple weeks ago that we met and heard from many of you. So if you would if you have anything to say, please make it different than what you have already said. Okay. Hi, Roger.
Okay, am I on? Am I live?
Yeah, pull it down. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I'm Roger Murray. I live on Brackett Road in Wolfeboro. Under the current ordinance, there's a limitation of 5 dwelling units for each multifamily building in the village residential, general residential, and the business districts, with the exception of the Central Business District and the Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District. Under the proposed amendment, that 5-unit limitation is gone, as is the 6-unit per building limitation in the Wolfeboro Falls and Central Business Districts. Basically, there is no restriction on the number of units you can have in a building other than what the density would allow. So if you have a 10-acre parcel, you, in theory, could put a 20-unit building on it. I was curious about the impact this might have, so I looked at South Main Street just from Weston Auto Body up to the high school. And in that short stretch, there's a 10.4-acre lot, 7-acre lot, 12.6-acre lot, and a 6.1-acre lot, which respectively would allow potentially for a 20-unit building, a 14-unit building, a 25-unit building, and a 12-unit building. I also looked at Pleasant Valley Road, which would fall within the districts allowing multifamily dwellings. Near the entrance, there's a 68-acre parcel, 5.5-acre parcel, 54-acre parcel, and a 42-acre parcel, which would translate into 120 units, 11 units, 108 units, and 84 units. Now, that would be limited by soils and slope, and perhaps nobody's going to build a 120-unit building there, but there's no limitation on the number of units you could put in the building. And this amendment also eliminates the current provision in the ordinance allowing more than one building on a lot of record. Looking to the master plan, the third recommendation under the community.
More than one is already in the ordinance,
What?
that you can have more than one building.
That you take that provision out of the ordinance. It's not there anymore. It's actually part of the language that was left out, I
yes.
think, but it is not in the in the proposed amendment. Getting back, the third recommendation under community character in the future land use chapter reads, new development and redevelopment should be compatible with Wolfeboro's character from a site design, scale, and architectural perspective. Buildings this size are not at all compatible with that. There needs to be a limit on the number of dwelling units that can be put in a building, whether it's 5, 6, some larger number depending on what district you're in. The sky should not be the limit. In terms of conversions, the current ordinance in the village residential, general residential, and business districts, again, except for the Central Business District and Wolfeboro Falls, provides for, by special exception, the conversion of an existing residential building in up to 4 dwelling units, provided the conversion is contained within the existing structure and the lot contains 7,260 square feet of area for each proposed dwelling units. Now, that went in quite a number of years ago, I think, in order to provide housing and also in the hopes that it would perhaps give a second life to some of the historic or substantial buildings in the town. Currently, the current ordinance allows 4 units on 2/3 of an acre. Now, the planning board has said that the purpose here is to provide housing, but under the amendment, you're only allowed 2 units per acre when you do a conversion in those districts. There are also problems with the Central Business District and the Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District. First, the amendment eliminates the provision permitting residential units in buildings which also contain commercial units. I know a number of master plan committees on the downtown economic development talked about the desirability of having commercial space on the ground floor with residential space up above. This would seem to prohibit that. It also eliminates the density calculation where commercial and residential units are on the same lot. And again, it eliminates the provision allowing more than one building on a lot of record. It also impacts the parking in the Central Business District and Wolfeboro Falls. The current ordinance permits parking within the side and rear yard areas, except for yard areas which abut a residential district boundary. The amendment provides that parking areas and access ways shall be no closer than 10 feet to any property line and shall be screened from view of abutting properties. In the case of conversion, the parking areas must also be screened from properties across the street. That would seem to make it virtually impossible to put parking in the downtown and meet these regulations. The multifamily ordinance also needs to be read in conjunction with inclusionary zoning, since the inclusionary zoning proposal permits multifamily dwellings everywhere but in the shorefront residence district and the municipal watershed. Now, you say, well, nobody's going to put a multifamily dwelling under inclusionary zoning in North Wolfeboro. You've got 5-acre zoning, you've got 10-acre zoning. But under the inclusionary zoning provisions proposal, the planning board is authorized to grant waivers to all provisions within that article. And there are large lots out there in Wolfeboro, whether you like a 55-acre, 100-acre, get up to 170. And under these provisions, there's absolutely no limitation on the size of a building. An applicant can come in before the board and say, you know, this is really a nice site out there. We've got good soils. Everywhere else in town, you allow 2 units per acre. Here, I think we'd like 1 unit per acre. So we'd like to put up this nice 100-unit building on 100 acres, and the planning board could approve that. And that just would totally change the character of Wolfeboro. I would hope that we do have 180 units, which will provide the potential to provide, hopefully, some housing that workforce can afford. And that will give the planning board some time to look at studies. The Lakes Region Planning Commission Housing Needs Assessment Study should be finished shortly, and that will give you some solid, concrete information to see how best to address the workforce housing in the town. So I would respectfully ask that the planning board withdraw this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Ann Blodgett. I'm actually representing the Heritage Commission tonight, and I am reading this for Chairman Maggie Steer, who unfortunately has been ill for the past 10 days. So the Heritage Commission is a town-wide advisory body that assists our town government to manage, recognize, and protect historical and cultural resources. Preserving our town's character and charm is consistently a top priority of the current and past master plans. We are charged with implementation of several components of the current master plan. At our meeting on December 14th, that's the Heritage Commission's meeting, we discussed the Planning Board's multiple proposed zoning amendments. Our commission voted 4-2. Unfortunately, Chairman Steer was not there, or it would have been 5-2, to ask the Planning Board to table these warrant articles pending pursuit of possible grants and further study of the impact of such changes on Wolfeboro's heritage and historic character. Several relevant studies are pending, including the Townwide Historic Resources Survey funded by Town Vote last year, which will be completed fall 2023, next fall. A recommendation of the 2021 Plan New Hampshire Charrette was to seek grant assistance from them or elsewhere to have an independent assessment of revisions to our zoning that would improve opportunities for workforce housing, especially in the downtown core. We feel this is a missed opportunity to gather more data, better inform the voters, and carefully work together to shape policy. By delaying the votes on these changes, we would hope to offer a broader voice and more information to our town government and its citizens while working together to address growth needs and maintain our overall community character. Signed respectfully, Maggie Steer, Chair, Wolfeboro Heritage Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a couple of questions of Ms. Blodgett? In the fourth paragraph, you're asking the planning board to, quote, table these warrant articles, unquote. Which warrant articles are you asking the planning board to table? All of them?
Yes, because there was a consensus in the Heritage Commission that there was lack of public understanding to have an effective vote and have effective public understanding.
So you would like to have the planning board table all the warrant articles that have been presented today and 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Can I ask where the Heritage Commission has been in the last year while we were debating these in open public session every other week? Were you not here?
I don't know what kind of question that is.
Okay,
but
I'm sorry. I'll withdraw that question.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Ann.
And remember, people do watch on TV. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Audrey Klein, North Main Street. I wanted to add one other change that this proposal brings that Roger Murray didn't mention, and that is that it removes the requirement or the requirement that you not have residential on the first floor in the Wolfeboro Falls district, that the first floor is to be commercial. So that was something that Roger didn't mention. I want to add that to his list of 6 or 7 things that your proposal changes in the zoning. I came here tonight thinking that the board was going to discuss the types of changes that this proposal is causing. I don't get the feeling that these are going to be discussed. We're telling you the concerns, but I don't see any discussion on the board's part. I don't believe you've met since we were here last. So, Ms. Chairwoman, you mentioned that the planning board believes that a special exception is not necessary because site plan review will take care of the issues. And I was wondering when that was decided and discussed amongst the planning board. And then I want to move on to something that I brought up on the 20th that I don't think has been spoken to by the board. There's been a change in the proposed ordinance in the last paragraph. And the last sentence of the last paragraph says, to remove conflicting language within the current zoning regulations where 175, 143 through 145 is controlling language for all affected base zoning districts. Now, I know that there's an attorney opinion on this, but I believe that is a fallacy. It's a mistaken belief that that section, 175, 143 through 145, controls all zoning districts. And as I brought up last time, over the last 30 years, 25 years, the code enforcement officer, the zoning board, the planning board, and every planner has read that multifamily section the same way, has administered it the same way, and has regulated it the same way. My feeling is, and I feel very strongly that this redefinition of that section is not the place of this board or the town planner or even the lawyer. The only board that determines what the zoning language means is the zoning board. So as far as administrative gloss goes, there's a strong administrative gloss that this section has always been read the way that it has been the last 30 years. And changing it now in order to bring forward a warrant article, frankly, I think is probably not legal. I have the definition of an administrative gloss here if you'd like to have it, with a description of what that means. I'm going to give a copy to the town planner. And unless you have any other questions, I think well, I guess I do want to say one more thing. You had a June meeting at which the multi-family unit section was discussed for perhaps 15 minutes or so. During that session, a number of people on the board asked questions of the town planner and just generally about what things meant. And I wrote down some of these questions with what I believe the answers are, but I've never heard any more discussion about what those things meant. There were questions about it, but I've not seen any answers or any discussion amongst the board. So I'm not sure any of those were answered. That's all, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Suzanne Ryan. I believe you have until the first week in January you could continue this meeting or hold another meeting if you were to make any changes. Tavis, is that correct?
I think January 14th is the first day if you're going to hold a public hearing where you anticipate a second public hearing.
That's the drop dead date. So there's still time.
Okay, go ahead with your statement.
So the point of the question is, I'd like you to reconsider 3 of your proposals. One was the no frontage one. The other was accessory dwelling. And the one that's being discussed right now, multifamily, I believe. And the accessory dwelling one was specifically related to detached. The mechanisms for appeal was via special exception, and it appears, from what I can gather, that you've changed it to conditional use. I would ask that you revert back to special exception ZBA. You heard testimony from a couple of people that liked the check and balance, and I felt it was inappropriate at that time to speak to it because I'm on the ZBA and I was waiting for you to sort it out and the public to speak. I think the public made it pretty clear, especially Mr. I think Lang, his name is, was quite interested. He said he'd been denied 3 times and still prefers the check and balance of going to the ZBA. There's one part of the one of the ordinances. Yeah, it's the accessory dwelling one where
we're
it
talking about
speaks
the
to
multifamily right now.
setbacks.
We're talking about the multifamily section right now.
All right, well, I'm just asking you to reconsider, because in multifamily, you've taken out the special exception and used the conditional permit. So I'm saying there's time for you to reconsider, there's time for you to repost, there's time for you to rehear. Please reconsider those that have a special exception taken out and revert back to the original you put conditional use in place of special exception. Please put the special exceptions back so that on those three proposals, if there's an issue, people get in a bind and they need to have an appeal, they go to the ZBA. You heard loud and clear from others rather than me, so I'm asking you, you've got time, please do that.
Okay, thank you.
Could you answer some of Audrey's questions? Nobody answers anybody's question.
Okay, we're having a public hearing. And, we will answer it. Tavis is going to answer everyone as soon as people are done. Anyone else want to mention? Did you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other members of the public? Tavis, you want to go through the questions that were just brought up?
I'm not sure which questions I'm addressing. To Bay Street Limited Business District, if you look at the last paragraph, it speaks specifically to removing the language in the parentheses in section 175, 116H, language in parentheses. All that does is 175, 116H, the language in parentheses refers to section 175, 143 through 145.
Tavis, could you please speak in the microphone so people can...
Section 175, 116H in the last paragraph toward the bottom of page 11, it talks about removing the language in the parentheses, not the entirety of 175, 116H. So the proposed amendment does not remove the no apartments on the first floor in that zoning district. It simply removes the reference to what currently goes to 175, 143, 144. In discussion with council, if the board's decision was to move the uses that are permitted, whether people agree with it or not, the uses that are permitted in 175, 143 to 144 into the underlying district as a permitted use, as they are permitted arguably in 143 through 145, the special exception could not stay. A couple of you reached out to me individually and indicated that there was concern because the special exception was leaving. What did that do to density? And the answer is briefly nothing. In the village residential district, if you look at all of the parcels in the village residential district and you subtract all of the common trail lands, town-owned lands, or parcels that are already developed to their maximum density, the remaining parcels average a lot of 0.62 acres. 0.62 times 2 is less than enough to have 2 units on a property. Currently, village residential already allows a single family or a duplex. So it's fair to argue that every lot already allows 2 units on a property in the village residential, and the multifamily has 0 benefit. There are larger parcels that could redevelop. One of the things the board discussed, whether it's clear in the minutes or not, is the board discussed on those large lots that could support, as Mr. Murray alleged, 10 or 20 unit buildings. Would not a 20 unit building have less impervious surface and road than 5 smaller buildings of 5 or 6 units each, equating to the same ultimate density? So that is something the board discussed. The other discussion the board had was if you had an existing building and it was on a large enough lot and without changing the structure it could satisfy more than 4 units, is that a problem? And the board did not have an issue with that discussion. That's where these deletions came from. I would also say that the term administrative gloss is interesting, and I agree if the town were to somehow automatically start reviewing the same regulation and implementing it differently, yes, but in this case the board is trying to make it clear what the board's intent of the regulation was. That's what I've understood the direction from the planning board to be. Instead of having a question be out there, simply move what the board thought the ordinance should be doing anyway and put it in the base zoning districts. So I know there were questions about, well, you're not supposed to, currently you can have an access way and you can park in the side yard and maybe people can't park there. That just simply means people won't be putting multifamily in those areas. The planning board can think about multiple site plans where they say, we really don't like how the parking is right up against the property line. Oh, by the way, the parking regulations say you're supposed to have trees every so many feet along a common property line anyway to provide a buffer. Putting trees in less than 10 feet probably doesn't make sense from a landscape point of view, much less a parking and maintenance standpoint. That's how the board came to the conclusions, and that's where the language came from that you're considering tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of the public want to comment on this? Okay, I'll close the public hearing then and go to the board members. Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, I think what is often forgotten and maybe not well explained by us in this conversation is that we do have architectural standards now. It was very difficult to get the town to approve such a thing, but we have standards that say anything that's over 2 families or 2 housing units on one lot requires site plan approval, which includes architectural design standards. So it has to fit the neighborhood. It has to have the same height limits that the underlying zone has. It has to meet all sorts of, the window size, the materials, all these things have to be consistent with the local region and generally the town. So as scary as it's been sounding recently, it's now more under control than it ever was because we have architectural standards, finally. We used to have guidelines. I'm not the chair.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, John.
So I was under the impression all along here that we weren't changing the density in the general residential district for a 1 acre density amount. And as I'm hearing tonight, we're down to 2 units per acre or 2 units per half acre.
Go? Okay. In the village residential, the minimum lot size is 1/2 acre. The first 2 permitted uses are a single-family dwelling or a duplex. If you were to have a vacant half acre and want to put in a multifamily building, we would take out, as we discussed the last time, the sensitive lands. Let's say you're still left with 1/2 acre. 0.5 times 2 is 1. So multifamily does not work in the vast majority of the village residential zone. In the residential district, it's a 1 acre zone. In a 1 acre zone, if you only have 1 acre, you get 1 unit. Duplexes are not duplexes are permitted in most zones. My point being, in order to have multifamily, you have to have a large lot.
So again, we were taking.
But we're not changing the density from what's currently permitted in the ordinance.
So I was under the impression from previous discussions that if you had a half acre lot in the village residential district and you're on town water and town sewer with the square footage of 7,260 square feet per unit, that you could just about get 3 units on that half acre lot. And we're discarding that now. Is that correct?
I'm pulling up village residential. Well, no, because the base zone says you need 1 acre per unit. You wouldn't get 3 anyway.
So in the current ordinance, you were using a metric of a 1 acre, which was 5 units per acre, and then you were saying that nothing has changed. So if you have a half acre, you would be able to divide that down. And I came to this meeting thinking that with a previous discussion, knowing that nothing had changed, but it's not what I'm hearing.
In the village residential, the smallest lot you can have is 21,780 square feet, which is half an acre. Each additional dwelling unit needs an additional 10,890 square feet per unit.
That's not what the original ordinance right here says in front of me.
It says it right here. This is village residential.
And we're not changing the underlying calculation.
Well, you're changing it down to two.
No, that's multifamily. Multifamily is 3 or more units in a building.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about multifamily. Multifamily should be allowed in the village residential district on town water and town sewer. I mean, why do we not understand that?
We do understand it. It's what the ordinance says right now at 2 units per acre under 175, 144. What the ordinance has said right along. This is not changing any of the language in the ordinance with regard to density.
So you were telling me before that it was 5 units per acre.
No. 6 units per acre in Wolfeboro Falls in the CBD or the C1. It's 2 units per acre everywhere else. Under 175, 143, then 144.
Roger stated the metric for a unit is 7,260 square feet per square feet per unit. And if you have a half-acre lot and it's just a little bit bigger than a half-acre or about, you could squeeze 3 units in per half-acre.
I would invite anyone, and this is dangerous to do, so I'm looking again. I would invite anyone to look through the village residential district and pull out the metric for 7,000 square feet. I'm happy to read it in its entirety if you'd like, but dimensional controls, minimum lot area 21,780 square feet. Why we don't say half acre, beyond me. B, each additional dwelling unit 10,890 square feet per unit. Minimum lot frontage 75 feet. Setbacks 20, 30, 10, and 10. Maximum height, no building closer. Percentage of maximum allowable lot coverage. Garages shall be located to side or rear of principal dwelling unit. Permitted uses, single family ADU, duplex, accessory structures, accessory uses, seasonal outside storage, 1 home occupation up to 500 square feet. Then you get to special exception uses where there's a reference to multifamily dwellings with a footnote to say, go to site plan review. Then it says, go to the off-street parking and loading requirements, look at the flood hazard ordinance and the wetlands ordinance. So I can't speak for Roger's metrics, but I'm happy to discuss that with him later. The point being, the board is not changing the densities currently allowed in the regulations with the change.
And that's what we agreed to, was to not change the density.
But you are changing the density.
You'll have to come up with an example, John. I'm sorry.
Let Mike speak. Go ahead.
Okay?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairwoman. A couple of points. When the planning board began thinking about these ordinances for multifamily, ADU, no frontage, and so on, our principal concern was the fact that the existing ordinances that we had for attracting multifamily workforce housing to town clearly were not really working. We didn't have any. So we thought to ourselves, let's try to make them better because change was necessary. And that is what you see in front of you today and last week as well. You notice in your newspaper last Thursday, comment from the town's engineer, Underwood, water demand in town has been flat for the last 10 years. And that sort of suggests a town that isn't growing at all. It's kind of like perking along the way it always has been. perfectly fine if that's what you want. But if you want a town that's going to grow, you're going to have water demand, but you're going to have ordinances that accommodate increased population. And that is what this board has attempted to do with these multifamily, inclusionary, et cetera, ADU zoning ordinances. Anything we do is new to the town. That's why so much opposition showed up 2 weeks ago and again tonight, not quite such large numbers, but still the principal players are here again. People don't like change. People resist change. But if we don't do something, in my opinion, we are likely to become kind of like a tombstone. Our town is not growing. We need to grow. We have needs, and they're not being met by our current zoning ordinances. So we tried this. If this is ineffective, as our previous ordinances clearly have been in practice, then they can be changed, like we're doing it tonight. They can be amended the next year if they haven't worked properly. Or in 10 years' time, if it turns out over time they haven't worked at all, like the ones that we're changing now. Nothing's written in stone, but unless we do something, this town is simply not growing right now. The opposition that I have heard, parsing out the minutiae, is delay. Don't do anything. Think about it. There's studies to be done, grants to be written. We don't like it right now. Think about it tomorrow. But we've been doing that for years. And that's why we are where we are now. And if we are comfortable with where we are now, then we should continue doing nothing. But if we're not, we should at least try. And that's what you see here tonight, an attempt. We're not perfect. We're doing our best. I asked, where has the Heritage Commission been, for example, in the last year of public hearings on these issues, prior to showing up objecting to all of them? And the answer I'll supply for you is they weren't there. Zero input. No objections. We don't like it. Got to change it. Fix this, fix that. We did what we could. Regarding special exception versus conditional use criteria, I served on the ZBA for 12 years. I was chair for on ZBA for a time. I am very comfortable supplanting special exception with conditional use, followed by site plan review. This board has expertise the ZBA simply lacks. And I would, if I were an applicant, much prefer coming to this board for the application of this board's expertise and resources than I ever would going to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which lacks the experience and the resources that the Planning Board does. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm actually feeling obliged to speak again because I am the Planning Board representative to the Heritage Commission. And I go to all the meetings and we have discussions and not everybody agrees, but I would just refer to Maggie's letter. Part of it is that the Plan New Hampshire charrette wants to seek revisions to our zoning that would improve opportunities for workforce housing, especially in the downtown core. You know, it also has, you know, the preface is we need to study it more. Well, we've had a number of surveys, including the master plan survey, the master plan, the charrette, and they repeatedly say, you know, we need to have better housing. I see businesses downtown that are constantly looking for employment. Restaurants close. There's a letter that we received, I don't know that anybody read it into the record last week, from Bonnie Medico. She's the chairman of the board of directors of Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition. And the second paragraph, she goes on to say, the current affordable housing shortage crisis impacts the town's economic well-being. Essential service providers such as medical service providers, schools, child care and emergency protection services are experiencing employee shortages, along with the town's private businesses. This lack of staffing can cause businesses to cut back on the services they provide to the public. Many workers employed locally cannot afford to live in the town in which they work. The lack of affordable housing close to jobs stifles the local economic growth, creates worker stress, and affects the quality of life for residents within our communities. It forces many families to pay far more than 30% of their income for local housing, creating an untenable cost burden for their housing. Well-kept, reasonably priced housing within our communities can provide individuals and families with safe and healthy places to live, which supports the sustainability and economic growth of the communities in which they live. The proposed amendments to the multifamily, inclusionary, and accessory dwelling unit planning and zoning ordinances could provide an increase of affordable housing possibilities in Wolfeboro. Well, she doesn't know it will. We don't know it will. We can only hope that relieving some of the limitations and making our zoning more inclusionary might improve the situation. Certainly allowing ADUs, which is really not on the topic list tonight, could help. And the question of whether or not things are going to be out of hand, or, that they become short-term housing, that is part of these warrant articles. We would like to add a definition to short-term housing so that it's limited to 30-day rentals for an ADU. That's part of this ADU language for detached ADU units. And then the other thing is the owner has to occupy one of the two units. So if you place a secondary small structure behind your house and it's detached, it has to be within 150 feet. It has to be behind and subordinate to the main house. It has to be accessed by the same driveway. And if the owner is present and it can't be rented for under 30 days, that is a self-policing policy. We don't have to worry about, the police as much being called to, a larger development. This is a nice method to introduce a very old-fashioned topic or possibility for housing on the same lot, such as the old carriage house apartment for the carriage house driver or the cook, or some child or something like that. It's not new. It's a very old-fashioned method, and it's a limited quantity. And you still have to meet all the usual setbacks. You have to avoid wetlands. You have to have sewage capacity, whether it's town sewer or it's your septic system. That's nothing new in that respect. We're not taxing that system any further. Sorry, had to go on.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to what I was discussing. On page 111, you are reverted to page 111 to the multifamily dwelling section when you look at your village residential and you want a special exception to apply for a multifamily housing. Which brings you to 175, 144, requirements for village residential, general residential, and all commercial districts except CBD and waterfront districts. And on page 112, on D2, the lot must contain 7,260 square feet of area for proposed dwelling unit. And you'll be removing that out of this, because you won't be allowing a special exception, which will revert you to this section of the multifamily housing. And that's contrary to what Tavis was just telling us, that's allowed.
No, what I said was village residential doesn't refer to 7,000 square feet. What the board had talked about was going with the base density of 2 units per acre, which is contrary to the 7,000. Its own ordinance is in conflict with itself. You either get 2 units per acre, 1 additional unit per every 7,600 square feet. Where the zone requires half an acre per unit, an additional 10,000, that would require at least 3/4 of a unit per acre, which is much different than one unit per acre or 2 units per acre. So the density is actually increasing by going with the permitted density of the 175, 144.
But you are removing this out of the section.
Moving the 7,000 square feet because it's in conflict with the first part of the sentence.
So why don't you just remove the conflict and make it the 7,260 instead of that?
Because that's a higher density and the board decided not to increase density.
That's what we decided.
But that's what I'm arguing against. You're missing it.
Well, I thought the board decided that we were not going to deal with that density issue until we heard the results of the sewer study. And
That's how you got there,
that's what I
yes.
remember. That's how we have been proceeding.
Kathy?
Okay, yes, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment regarding utilities and the density. I'm also on the understanding here that we're not increasing density at all by talking just multifamily here right now. By taking this standalone ordinance and moving it into each of the districts that we talked about here. And the ones that the districts that do have the water and sewer available to them, even if the densities did change or if they even stay the same, if we get into our reports as they come in later this, fairly soon here, we hope, that the town has the option to say no to any development that would stress or overburden the utilities that we have in place here. If there's a lot of you folks remember, probably 15 or 16 years ago, we were under an administrative order where the town wasn't even issuing building permits because we were allowing no water, no sewer, or sewer hookups at all. So that ability still stands with the boards here in the town government to not overstress the systems that we have until they're, upgraded to allow for the expansion, for the extra hookups and everything. So
for the board's perspective, the perfect time for someone to address that would be when water and sewer attend a technical review committee meeting and be able to state this is where the system is now, this is what the added burden would be, recommendation is to approve or modify.
I just want to put that out there, that the town has that ability to, to say no to these if the need comes and it looks like we're overburdening the existing systems that we have, so.
Thanks, Brad. Anyone else?
The other thing to note on that regard is that we had a sewer moratorium about 15, 20 years ago that was put in place by the Board of Selectmen. It did not mean that we were changing the underlying zoning in the town. We're planning with zoning here, and the Board of Selectmen can pass down, we've got to fix this sewer problem if we have such a thing, or our water lines are undersized, or whatever we have to do and implement using, capital planning. So they're two separate things. One is to have the mechanism in place to know what you could have in the zone, assuming that you have an okay from the select board or from the sewer department that says we have capacity.
Yeah, thank you, Vaughn. Okay. Entertain
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'd like.
Just a second. I'll open the public hearing so that you can, did you want to make a
You're
statement?
reopening the public hearing?
Yeah, yes, I am, so he can speak.
My name is Craig Sutherland. I'm just a resident homeowner here in Wolfeboro. I'm ignorant as to what's allowed today under the present rules and regulations. I'm just trying to confirm my understanding of what's proposed. And my understanding, based upon what I've read, I actually tried to prepare. I watched half of the December 6th meeting on video. got sidetracked after that. But if I understand this correctly, whether it be by virtue of accessory dwelling units or multifamily, I'm getting confused, but it doesn't seem to make any difference in terms of what's proposed if there's a limit of 2 dwellings per acre in the residential areas. Tavis is shaking his head. So I guess my question is, under what circumstances would there be more than 2 dwellings allowed on an acre in a residential zone or district?
Thank you.
Not in the central business district and not in Wolfeboro Falls. I don't know
There
where
wouldn't
those
be.
districts begin and end. I'm ignorant of that. But I know they've carved out as exceptions to have greater density. But assuming it's general residential or village residential, under what circumstances could somebody get more than 2 units per acre?
They would need enough.
Okay, just a second. Okay, thank you. That's your question.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So you'd have to have a large enough lot minus sensitive lands to multiply by 2 units per acre to be in excess of 2.
No, we heard you.
You would have to have more
Yeah,
than 1 acre.
okay, thank you very
Correct.
much. Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing again. Okay,
I'd like to make a motion tonight to table Article number 9, warrant article, because of the input from the public and the more questions than answers. No data to back it up. We have the Heritage Commission's letter tonight, and I think we have not answered all the questions from the public. I think we should table Article number 9, warrant article.
that's your motion.
Yes.
Okay, motion has been made to table this matter. Somebody want to second it?
I'll second for discussion.
By Article 9, we shouldn't refer to it as Article 9. You should refer to it as it's presented on the agenda.
Item Roman numeral 3, lowercase a, parens, close.
From the first agenda, yes.
From the agenda-
From tonight's agenda,
From
yes.
tonight's agenda as presented. Is that good, John?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, we'll have to do a roll call vote on,
Discussion.
okay. Yeah, okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Okay, for discussion. Okay. Somebody want to discuss that?
Sure, I'll discuss it. My opinion is that we have the best version of this multifamily that we can come up with. We worked on this for a year. Nothing that a human does is perfect, so I'm going to assume that this is not perfect either. I'm also going to assume that the longer we work on it, we're going to get down to, it's never going to be perfect. I do not feel in favor of this motion. As best I can do.
Julie, did you want to? Okay, anybody else? Okay, so call for the question then. Do a roll call vote. Doug?
Aye.
For tabling?
Correct.
This is to table, okay.
Nay, no, nay.
Okay, Von Dugan, no. Mike Hodder?
Oh, no.
Okay, John Thurston?
Aye, yes.
Brad Harriman?
No.
Okay, Julie Jacobs?
No.
Kathy Barnard, I'll vote no. So that means that John's motion failed.
Correct.
Now we have to go to the next motion.
So I'll make a motion that this board move to the warrant article as presented tonight, Roman numeral 3 in the public hearing section, lowercase a, item number, multifamily housing as defined therein.
Okay, that's your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, another roll call vote. Doug Breskin,
I'll vote nay.
Von Dugan,
Yay.
Von says yes, Mike Hodder.
Yes.
Yes, and John Thurston,
Nay.
nay. Brad Harriman,
Yes.
Brad votes yes. Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
Julie votes yes, and Kathy Barnard, I'll vote yes. So that motion passes
5-2.
5-7.
5-2.
5-2.
5-2, which equals 7.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Very good. Thank you, folks, for your comments. Okay, on to the next item, which is the next item is the C2 district, 175-109 through 112, deleting the commercial district C2 in its entirety. This again was continued from December 6th. Yes. go
So
ahead.
just for the board, in Article 7, as it's written on page 2 of the guide, there is currently an error. It refers to Article 17. It should be Article 18. For the board's edification, 17 is the Bay Street Limited Business District, and C2 is Article 18. For the purpose of complying with the public notice requirement, you'll notice, as Kathy read, the public notice referred to section 175, 109 through 112, so it was appropriately noticed. I just had a typo in the draft warrant article question. At the last meeting, there was discussion about what would said piece of property be zoned if C2 were to go away. And for those that like to go back in town reports, as I found out I needed to do, C2 has not existed as a zoning district since 2008. In 2008, the district boundary for C1 or CBD was amended to encircle all of what is currently shown on the unofficial zoning map as C2. For the true gophers in the crowd, C2 GD, as in General Downtown. General Downtown also in 2008 was eclipsed by Wolfeboro Falls Limited District and the Bay Street Limited Business District. All of those areas were previously a version of C2, but that's beyond what the question was. So since 2008, there has been no C2 zoned by zoning district boundary. Yet since 2008, we've had permitted uses and special exception uses and development criteria in the zoning regulations, which are currently proposed to come out with this article. So the boundary is updated. The map can be corrected. And just as a side note, the property in question is also under conservation easement, making the zoning relatively superfluous anyway. So the article doesn't have to be amended to address the change proposed by the board.
Oh, okay, so basically it was a map error.
Correct.
Okay, and really the whole purpose of this was to just eliminate C2 from the zoning ordinance, as Tavis just said. Okay, I'll open the public hearing on this item. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Go to the board members, planning board members. Any questions, comments? Somebody want to make a motion?
Somebody want to give me some hints as to how I motion this? I could simply say move to
Delete.
Commercial District C2 in its entirety as presented.
Motion to move the question as identified as Roman 3 sub B on the 1220 agenda to the question.
Yeah, I would like for the record to show that the Vice Chairman of the Planning Board adopts the language offered by the planner as a motion.
Seconded.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Another roll call. Doug Breskin.
Aye.
Doug votes
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
Vaughn votes aye. Let's see, Mike Cotter
Yes.
votes in favor. John Thurston,
Aye.
John votes in favor. Brad Harriman
Yes.
votes in favor. Julie Jacobs,
Yes.
okay, votes in favor. And Kathy Barnard, I'll vote in favor. So that goes to the town warrant with 7 votes. Okay, on to the next, wait a minute, Mike, did you want to make a comment?
No. I don't think I need to.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, all right, on to the next item. Valerie Sanford and Tracy, first of all, Peter, you're going to sit on this one. And Julie, you're back to being an alternate. And Doug is on the phone or on video. Okay, Valerie Sanford, Tracy Whitehead, Catherine Morgan, Sarah Morgan, Point of Pines Road, tax map and lot 2236, 61, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16. This is case 2022-13 for a boundary line adjustment with 7 lots. Good evening.
Good evening. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
My name is Randy Tatro with Norway Plains, the surveyor on the project. I'm here tonight with Will McDuff, another member of Norway Plains, and Sarah Sanford Miller, which is one of the sisters involved in the lot line adjustment. Yeah. So you guys have seen this briefly under a voluntary merger scenario where there were numerous small lots of record that were merged to create the existing plan that's shown today. The plan, in essence, is to adjust these 4 new lot lines from the original yellow ones that are shown on there. So on your smaller drawings, they're the dotted lines. Those are the original deeded lot lines. Oh, they've got that. Okay, yeah. So, again, there's 7 parcels in total. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 that have dwellings on it, existing seasonal cottages. And there are 1, 2, 3 that have accessory garage structures. We went to the TRC, and there were some questions regarding exactly how the lots were changing. So this lot, which is 6-1, and 10, and 12, and 15 are the ones changing. 3 of them that are getting larger. And it appears that this lot is getting slightly smaller, 22316. But if you recall, this lot was merged together by another lot. So in essence, the resulting net is larger than it was originally. It just got, there was a small lot on this section that got merged. It's somewhat shown, and I'll get into this a little later when I speak to the waivers. It's somewhat shown on the septic design for the cottages that these cottages have a approved septic on this lot over here. And there's an existing system being designed on this lot. There's an existing system already, but we're designing a new one on this lot. So the other 4 cottages go to the septic on that lot, and the rest of them are garages. We did have a question about the being able to inhabit the garage lots as part of the TRC discussion, remember, Mr. Chair? And so we did add the usable land on here. There really isn't much usable land on the accessory dwelling sides. They're garages that currently house either boats or antique vehicles, you know, and that's what they plan on keeping them that way. We did ask for waivers on, you know, the standard things that are required in the checklist items for sewer, you know, for topo and wetlands and soils. And as I showed you, there's existing approved septic design for the lots, for all of these lots. And there's one underway on this lot, which is the largest lot of the cottage lots. And I probably should have backed up. Everybody know where this is situated? You go down Pleasant Valley Road, and you go past Point Breeze, Point of Pines Road. Used to be called, in the old deeds, used to be a different name under the original deed. It was called Inwood Avenue when it was originally created. So this is a private road that services all of these lots. And tonight's application is only to adjust these lot lines. There's no planned further development. These adjustments, I think as you guys are experienced enough to tell, try to make the lots a little more in conformity. This lot is obviously encroaching under the deed line. This lot is real tight to the, you know, to the structure on the deed line. This lot is same things, real tight on the setback. So the family members have come up with these proposed lot lines. This lot line here, this gravel drive area services this outbuilding. So they wanted to keep these, you know, on the land that they will be deeded. So they'll all have the associated, you know, structures and cottages. Does anybody have any questions about that? Am I describing that well enough? Yep.
Clarification, it was 7 lots and it's still 7 lots?
Yeah, well, it was more than that originally, Vaughn, before there was a bunch of smaller lots, which I have a plan. Yeah, I think it was 14.
But I mean, today, it's 7 lots?
Right. There's no additional lot that's being created out of this, yeah. So, like I say, the yellow lines are being abandoned and the blue lines are being established. Other than that, the reasons for the waivers are obvious. These are pre-existing non-conforming lots. We're not proposing any new development. We do have proof that they have a more modern septic approvals. So, you know, nothing's going to change in that regard. Again, there's four applicants, and hopefully I say them correctly. Tracy S. Whitehead, Valerie C. Sanford, Catherine Sanford Morgan, and Sarah Sanford Miller. These individuals will be the resulting owners of this lot line change, and there won't be any additional or different ownership entities proposed by this.
Okay, so the waivers are,
Yep. So the waivers are to sections 174-7, D.4, 174-7, D-6, D.4 is existing and proposed topographic contours at 2-foot intervals. We had full topography on the septic design plan. And again, we're not proposing any structures or development as part of this application. Soils mapping and soils tests, same rationale. They're existing lots of record. They have existing septic facilities. And the only lot that's getting smaller is actually larger by virtue of the previous mergers. So as far as septic capabilities, they're all pretty well taken care of.
okay, so those are the 2 waivers?
Yep.
Then. Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to
I'd be happy to move to approve waivers for 174-7D4 and 174-7D6 as presented.
Okay, I'll second that. Any other questions? Okay, roll call vote. Doug?
Aye.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Peter? Yes. Mike?
Yes.
John?
Aye.
Okay, Brad?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, so the waivers are granted then. Anything else before I open the public hearing?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Okay, I'll open the public hearing on this item. Okay, and Tavis, do you have some conditions for us to consider?
Can I ask a couple of
Oh, I'm
questions?
sorry about that.
That's all right, and that's not my problem. For Randy. In your notes, Randy, number 8 you explained in the presentation. Number 11, where is 22324?
223, yeah, well, we come up here with that, yeah. 22324, they also own you have a copy of the boundary plan in there?
I'm just interested to see
It's-
where that
it's-
lot lies.
yeah,
That has a right of
It's
passage.
one of the abutters.
Yeah. See, 223.4 goes
There
down
it
in
is,
here.
it's on the map. I can see it on the map.
Can
Yeah,
you see
thank
it?
you. It's
Because we
good.
got the boundary, I brought the boundary survey along that shows the whole thing.
I, for some reason, didn't see it when I
Yeah.
looked at it.
There's a little island that's part of this too, that's out off of here.
Okay.
That's
And-
not part of the lot line adjustment, but an existing part
And
to it.
only one other question, in your note number 12, ownership of Point of Pines right-of-way, no research was done. What is your understanding of that ownership?
Well, the understanding of that ownership is that they own it fee, Mike, per the original conveyance of that road. So there was a discussion about that. And according to the document, the original land was divvied up and they left that strip. So right now it's really a private road,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. And it goes all the way out to at the end of the property. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tavis.
I have to, because I don't feel I'm doing my job if I don't bring this up. Functionally, a boundary line adjustment is considered a re-subdivision of land. So when this plan is recorded, if it is recorded, this plan will be a subdivision plat of a form that calls out Point of Pines as a road.
Understood.
As in under 67441, this would be a
Understood.
plat and a road. So I had suggested to TRC that Randy coordinate with his client, and because I would be so suggesting to the board that perhaps a restriction be placed on the, I'll call them the bottom 3 lots, so that they would be a no-build easement, but they'd be able to maintain the garages, et cetera, or put a note on the plan that no residential structures to be developed. Now, it's fairly obvious with the pink line that there's not much land left for a home, much less a home and septic, but people can get creative with time. So I'm just putting that out, whether for the board to consider, that while there's no intention currently, and the Four Sisters or Four Sisters and their subsequent may have no intention and have deed restrictions accordingly, I just want the board to be aware that approving this would effectively create a road where no road was really established before.
And did you talk to your clients about?
We did.
putting a note on-
It is 4 sisters, 3 sisters and a sister-in-law. We did propose that to them. They didn't feel that it was at all probable, so they didn't want to make a. And again, I hadn't talked to you guys yet, but they didn't want to make a restriction on there. They didn't feel it was necessary. If you feel it is necessary as part of the approval, then we'll talk about it right now. You know, I mean, again, what Tavis is saying is once plat is signed by a planning board, then it is quote unquote a street per the statute.
Yeah, and that's
Someone
why-
could try to go back in and subdivide these areas per your regulations. I'm
Or,
pretty...
or get a building permit on it. Right now, they can't get a building permit
Right.
on it.
You get a building permit for an inhabitable structure.
Any structure, or 67441 is erection of any structure.
They could get a building permit for a structure, or the same type of structure, or a different garage.
Which is why I think we need to have some kind of restriction in the approval.
So currently, it would be a special exception. If the proposed warrant article passes, it would be a conditional use permit in order to get
Right.
to issuance of a building permit.
It wouldn't be allowed without that, right?
Understood.
Yeah.
But if the boundary line adjustment gets a planning board signature and is recorded, special exception or conditional use would not apply to getting a building permit for that lot.
Okay, it would still be, I would feel more comfortable if it's unbuildable.
Buildable or
Unbuildable.
no habitable structure.
No habitable, yeah, okay,
You guys can put a condition on there.
And
I
that's
mean-
what I'm looking for.
yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
I mean,
That's what we talked about at TRC.
yeah, the owners didn't want to make it a deed description, a deed restriction. So I can't really,
It can be a subdivision condition.
it can be a condition of the approval.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So I have a question. So the high lot on the top side, on the left, there's
This
nothing
lot?
there's nothing on it.
There's a house.
Up here?
Oh, it doesn't show a house.
No,
right,
you two are pointing to two different lots. He's
Okay.
talking to the one to the left.
right here, Randy. I mean,
One next to
yeah,
Peter's?
that one right there.
That's Peter's.
Oh,
It has a house on it. We just didn't show it on.
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so could you add a condition? Anybody have any problems adding that condition?
So, yeah, the suggested conditions at this point, while I fumble for a map, are simply applicant to submit copies of draft deeds memorializing the respective changes prior to recordation at the applicant's expense. Applicant shall be responsible for recording fees for the notice of merger, also required by the regulations. It's not a condition, but it's in the regulations, so I say it again, for the monumentation.
Monumentation, yeah.
And then the addition of a, would this be a plat note? Or a
We can make
plan?
it a note.
Note-
The wording
note-
of it would be what?
Noting on the plan that tax map 22316 is amended, 22315 is amended, 22312 is amended.
Cannot have habitable.
Cannot have construction of habitable space, or something to that effect. Now, when I say 22312, 15, and 16 as amended, if the lines are moving, they may get new numbers, question mark. I don't know which numbers are,
We already went over the numbers.
so those are the
with
numbers
Linda.
that are going
Yeah,
to stay? Okay.
yeah.
So I withdraw that. So that's the bottom three.
So the numbers
would
are
have
gonna
no
stay the same.
habitable,
Right.
habitable
No
construction.
habitable space, okay.
I have a question. So since this is a private road, would you seek the permission from the selectmen to gain a building permit, or
I think it's not a Class 6 road.
it's not?
No.
No.
It's a private road.
Yeah.
Right now, it's effectively a driveway. If
Yeah.
that plan is approved, it will
It's a
become
private, it's a
road.
private road, a driveway, whatever you want to call it right now, that's had building permits on, in the past, John. It's not like a Class 6 road where they'd waive their rights to services, for a waiver to the selectmen. So in this case, they've already got building permits, they've already got structures there. So that's not going to change any of that.
So he was talking about a uninhabitable structure.
Yeah, what he's talking about is on the smaller ones,
You could have a
because
shed,
of their
you could have
size, the board wants to put a restriction on there that they're not turned into houses or
They're not
habitable
housing
spaces.
lots.
That they remain garages, remain accessory buildings.
And that's something easy enough. If a future owner of the entire piece or a portion wanted to redevelop that road and turn it into a different scenario, I mean, who knows? In 200 years, maybe there's water and sewer out there. In that case, there would be no real need for such a restriction, potentially.
Yeah,
All right, so
my discussion with the owners centered around, do you want to put a deed restriction on that and offer it to the board? They did not. So if the board wants to put a restriction on those three lots as far as them remaining, accessory structures and non-inhabitable, then
Right.
that's what you get to do.
So we'll simply, as a fourth condition, add a note to the plat that tax map numbers 223, 16, 15, and 12 shall have no habitable space constructed thereon.
Correct.
Okay, everyone all set
You
with
want to
that?
Yeah,
confer?
why don't we, hold on just a second. Is this something you'd like to say, Mayor? Yeah,
Right.
they realize that.
It's just a technicality, ma'am. It's something we need to do for the future, for safety, for the future. Recognizing the fact that it is, as you say, currently somewhat underwater.
Oh,
Sure, I don't know.
yes, public hearing is
My
open.
name's Roger Murray. I have represented this family for years and years and years. I do not represent them on this. I've had no involvement with it, but it seems to me that the planning board is exceeding its authority by imposing this restriction. I mean, right now, if they were going to build there, they would have to meet the zoning requirements. They'd have to meet setbacks. They'd have to get septic approval or tie into something, and that's never going to happen.
Well, that's not necessarily true. You could potentially meet setbacks and put a
No.
very narrow, yeah, you could. I'm pretty sure it's possible. You can do a tiny house or something like that.
Is anything lost by this additional restriction, Roger?
Well, I think
Or is it simply?
the applicants are not all here to agree to it.
I'm asking you a question because you raised the issue.
Yeah, I don't, they have not agreed to do this, and I don't think,
That's not the question. The question is anything lost by adding this additional condition? You
well,
raised the
that's
issue.
not the question. The
That's
question
my
is,
question, Roger.
well, I'll ignore your question because
Then
I
you
don't-
may as well sit down.
No, I get to talk.
Come on.
You're
It isn't
not
a
answering
question
the-
of whether
I
anything
asked
is
you a
lo-
question.
It's not a question of whether anything is lost. It's a question of whether the planning board has the authority to impose this restriction.
That wasn't my question.
I know it wasn't, but that's
Can I
my
interject?
response.
I think that the issue is that now that we are platting sort of a right-of-way, now these lots potentially could be developed. If you put a tiny house, you could probably put one on every single one of those lots. And meet the setbacks. As long as, you're going to have to pipe the septic to some remote location like the other lots are doing.
You're going to have a 50-foot setback from the water.
It's on there. I see it. But you could put a tiny house. But anyway, if it's not buildable, it's not buildable, so this restriction is not a problem.
That's my point. Thank you, Owen.
Exactly. And we don't want that.
Yeah.
We would make it legal by putting this roadway on a subdivision plat the way it's shown. That makes it buildable. If you can,
question.
if you can meet all the other requirements, setbacks and septic. That's the issue.
I guess I'm understanding or misunderstanding the confusion because the original presentation was that no one was planning to change anything down there. And as soon as the board tried to memorialize that, everyone's concerned about building and coming up with ways to put septic different places. So the only point I raised is if the board approves this boundary line adjustment, it has the same effect as a subdivision plat, and Point of Pines becomes a road on a planning board approved plat, which means building permits can be issued absent the special exception under the current rules or the conditional use permit of the proposed rules. I mentioned the limited building area of the 3 lots on the low side of Point of Pines, 15, 16, and 12, and suggested the board might want to consider while they're looking at the subdivision plat that those lots were not being deemed buildable for habitable space at this time.
And
If somebody wanted to appeal that, that could be appealed. If somebody wanted to modify conditions, that could be modified.
okay, and we agree with your suggestion.
Well, I'm just,
And that's what we're adding is the condition. And
Okay, a final word on that. This is a lot line adjustment under a reconfiguration of non-conforming lots. And in this particular case, Plan Board has to deem it a betterment under the regulation, under the reconfiguration of non-conforming lots, which is discretionary zoning, basically. And so in this particular case, although they would rather not have this condition, if the board's approving this with this condition, then, like you said, they'd have to change that at some point in time. I particularly worked in Wolfeboro for quite a while. It would be quite a deal to try to pull something off over there. I never say never. It's a big word. I know you guys understand that. But, you know, if the approval hinges on this condition, then I think that they would probably go along with that. And in other words, if the planning board wants to put a condition on those garage lots that they're not turned into living space, in order to approve this lot line adjustment, then that is the crux of the matter. Right. So in this particular case, that's the board's preference, then, you know, that's the approval that you do. Again.
Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, Kathy, I got a kind of a question here. Perhaps Randy can answer it. When this came in previously to create these lots that you're doing the boundary line adjustment on now, wasn't at that time this little right-of-way, roadway, private road created then, Randy?
No. Well, no, it was created by deed, but that's how the deeds come out,
Okay.
Brad. So in other words, those parcels came out per that original plan that was brought in under the lot merger. So all those little lots were deeds that were created over time from the early 1900s forward. They weren't necessarily shown correctly on the tax maps, so they looked a little bit different. So the theory was, do a merger first, get the majority of the situation cleared up, and then come back in and do this lot line adjustment to get the structures in the driveways on the right lot and so forth.
So we're not really creating anything different out there as far as that private roadway
No,
goes.
the status of it is what's different.
Yeah.
Once it's signed on a plat on the planning board, then it has a different status
When it's a private.
than when it's just a private road right away. Yeah.
To me, it seems like there's the major issue there is there's a property line presently going right through a house.
There's a couple of them,
And
but yeah.
so, I mean, and the setbacks are not proper, and so therefore that needs to be corrected.
Right. And that's the essence of the application that's before the board.
Could I just throw a little monkey wrench in? We've been talking about the ADU issue a lot. So I'm kind of leaning towards maybe we should have that restriction because we've got lovely little garages on the lower level here. That could very well be no. You're saying no?
It's all shorefront. They can't have detached ADUs.
The one on the left isn't. Number 16's not.
It couldn't have a detached, even under the proposed language. It's all shorefront.
Once it's on a new subdivision plat with this right-of-way shown, or that's on a plat, you could tear everything down there and put 3 little houses if you can meet the setbacks and you find some place to put septic.
My knowledge of the area indicates there's no possibility on those back lots to put a septic. As in 15 and 12, there's no chance because the setback from the road and everything else is in wetland.
Yeah, that's true, but you just showed us a plan of the septic for the houses that exist that is all down in one further location. You could put a septic system out here.
That's where one's going to be built.
Well, okay, and there's one here for all these houses, so there could be one back here. They could grant themselves, you know, it's possible to relocate septic.
This additional condition gains or loses the applicant nothing.
At this
It
juncture.
simply recognizes an existing fact that the land is probably not buildable, but it also acknowledges the fact that by doing this boundary line adjustment, we are creating essentially a road shown on a planning board plat, and that renders that road and the parcels that abut it with a different legal status. And that's what we're trying to avoid the problems for the future.
This is more for the future than maybe dealing with the present owners.
I understand the details.
I'd be happy to move to approve.
We need to close the hearing.
All right.
Yeah, okay, so everybody's all set. Okay, I'll close the public hearing.
Be happy to move to approve the boundary line adjustments for tax map numbers 2236, 6.01, 10, 11, 12, 15, and 16 as presented tonight with the 4 conditions debated at length this evening.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded.
Including the condition about the habitable space on 12, 15, and 16.
Yeah, with the 4 conditions as presented.
Yeah.
So the board hasn't really discussed findings of fact on this. So did you mean to, the board might
Yeah,
want to
okay,
discuss
all
that,
right,
you know.
the lots are becoming more conforming, though they still don't meet the regulations.
It's better.
The restriction has been put on in order to protect the integrity of the land. And that's pretty much it.
And the boundary line adjustments remove setback encroachments and an
Right.
anomalous boundary line running right through the center of a house.
Okay, okay, roll call vote. Doug?
I vote aye.
Okay, Doug votes aye. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Aye. Peter Goodwin?
Abstain.
Okay, Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, John Thurston?
Aye.
John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Brad votes aye. And I will vote in favor of this. Okay.
I abstain because I am
Butter.
basically in a butter of this.
Yeah, okay, all right, so that's 6, 1 abstention. 6 in favor, 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay, the next
Who seconded that?
item, Richard and Elaine Haggerty
Kathy.
and Clark Family Trust, Robert and Ann Clark, Churchill Road in Red Brook Circle, tax map 221-5 and 20, case 2022-14. This is a boundary line adjustment.
Long time no see. Randy Tatro, Norway Plains, for the applicant. The applicant is Rich Haggerty, and Mr. Clark. And these properties are located on Red Brook Circle, which is down Pleasant Valley Road. Before Point Breeze, you take a left on Red Brook Circle. The subdivision is, I believe, vintage 50s. The original subdivision that this is on. I'll kind of paraphrase my narrative. This lot is the last lot in that 50 subdivision that doesn't have a structure on it, I believe, on the comprehensive subdivision. We did some original work on the lot along with Folsom Design, looking at the existing lot. There was some wetlands on one side of it, didn't give it enough room to work very well. The applicants came to an agreement for Mr. Haggerty to purchase some land off of Mr. Clark to make it into, to help with the buildable site. And that's the proposal before you tonight. So it's not technically a reconfiguration of non-conforming lots, because although one lot is pre-existing non-conforming, the other lot is large, 12, 13 acres that it's coming out of, and that lot is undeveloped. So as you can see up in the upper left-hand corner, that kind of shows, you know, the extremities of the lot that the 0.3 acres is coming out of. The other existing lot that's undeveloped is right off of Red Brick Circle. And I think Mr. Haggerty has a family cottage on the other side of the road. So he owns this lot. We look into it. We see that there's a fairly substantial, poorly drained wetland on the right-hand side of it. He talks to Mr. Clark about obtaining a parcel that's more developable. So we go through a few configurations of that. Jumping ahead a little bit, I don't know if we included this as part of the package or not, but this is a copy of the septic design that's currently in front of DES, and it kind of shows what he's going to do a little bit better.
I want to rotate it so it looks like our other plan, just so that.
Yeah, maybe I can do this a little better.
Thank you.
Okay, so so that gives a driveway that doesn't encroach on the wetlands. It gives, you know, a dwelling spot and a septic design on that additional land. If you can picture. So see, this is the existing lot, the driveway.
Okay. The lot where the land is coming from still remains conforming.
Yeah, it's large. It's like
Right.
12, 13 acres,
Right,
Kathy.
yeah.
It says on here.
Okay.
You guys see that okay? See what that looks like? Yeah, so I apologize for not having that. I think it just got submitted to the state. But again, that'll speak to my waivers because I asked for a waiver to topo and test pits and stuff, and that's already done. So the septic design is already submitted. Yeah, so the remaining land is, it's existing 13.2 and it's going to be 12.9. It's undeveloped, but it's on a private road, Churchill Road, that comes down in and goes down by a lot of the lakefront lots on Lake Wentworth, if you kind of know where you are in that area. So that particular lot isn't going to change much, but it's going to help this situation quite a bit, because if we were to try to squeeze something in there, special use permit, try to get something, you know, reasonable in the buffer, there's not much room to do that. So this was an alternative to do that. Again, it's going to be on septic. It's on, Red Brick Circle is on a community water system. So you got off-site water, which makes that septic design a little more flexible because you don't have a well radius to deal with or anything like that. So in this particular case, someone sees this one, there might be some other people asking to do the same thing, I don't know, in different parts.
So this is a private road,
Yes.
Churchill Road.
Churchill Road's a private road, I believe, as well.
So is
Red
that
Brick Circle's a private road.
Is that a Class 6 road?
Nope, it's a private road. Association maintained.
So what's your criteria for a Class 6 road?
A Class 6 road is a Class 5 road that hasn't been maintained by a municipality for at least
It's a
10 years.
municipality status.
Okay.
You know, so Class 6 is municipality status, sometimes subject to gates and bars, or if you want to improve it or if you want to build on it, then you sign that waiver to the selectmen, which says, hey, I know I'm building on a Class 6 road and it's not maintained by the town, so my services.
So that was my next question. So you'd go to the selectmen to get a building permit?
On a Class 6 road. And on this one, you go to selectmen to get a building permit. They give you a building permit. I mean, bill inspector to get a building permit. You don't have to go to selectmen on this one because it's already a subdivision approved by a planning board. So it qualifies under the statute for erection of buildings on a street. This is why all the cottages are already in there, John, you know? So again.
That's why I was so touchy on the last one, too.
Yeah, so in this particular case, there won't be any problem with the selectmen as part of this, as far as having to get a waiver to that building site.
Okay. Anything else?
Move to approve the
Okay.
waivers?
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
For a motion to approve the waivers.
Yeah, I'll be happy to
and-
move to approve waivers for 1747D4 and D6 as presented for the reasons also as presented.
Okay, I'll second that. Roll call, Doug?
I vote aye.
Doug votes aye. Vaughn?
Aye.
Vaughn votes aye. Peter? Yes. Votes Peter votes aye. Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Mike votes aye. John Thurston?
Aye.
John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Brad votes aye, and I will vote in favor of this. So the waivers have been granted. I'll now open the public hearing. A member of the public want to comment on this? Guess not, right? Okay. Okay, Tavis, did you have some conditions you wanted us to consider?
Yep, these are actually the same conditions as shown on the last report. Applicants should submit copies of draft deeds memorializing respective change prior to recordation at the applicant's expense. Applicant should be responsible for recording fees. And if the board wants, you can add the third condition on monumentation, but that's required by regulation anyway. So
Why don't we be precise and add it?
that's fine.
Monumentation as required.
What's the, what condition do you want put on? I didn't.
Monumentation.
Require monumentation of the change.
Okay, all right. Okay, anything else?
Move to approve.
Okay, I need to close the public hearing first. Okay, now consider a motion.
Be happy to move to approve the boundary line adjustment for tax map lots number 221-5 and 20 as presented, with the with the three conditions as noted.
Okay, and as far as meeting the state requirement, this makes the original lot more buildable, more nearly conforming, though not conforming. The land that it's taken from on Churchill is still conforming, and it creates more of a buildable space. So does that meet the?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, so motion has been made and seconded. Okay, Doug, vote on this
vote aye.
motion. Okay, Doug votes aye. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Von Dugan votes aye. Peter?
Aye.
Peter votes aye. Mike?
Yes, aye.
Mike votes aye. John Thurston?
Aye.
And John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
Aye.
Brad votes aye, and Kathy Barnard, I also vote in favor. So this application is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you very much, too.
Thank you, Randy. No, agreed. That's right.
Right.
There's always a zoning board.
Yes, that's right. Okay. On
Madam Chair, I have a discussion item.
Yeah.
If we could discuss it perhaps
Oh,
before.
Okay, could I just make a, before I forget?
Okay.
I've got, there's a retirement party for Dave Ford. It's going to be on Friday, December 30th, from 2 to 4. Everybody is invited.
Is it here?
Here at, yes, here at the Great Hall. So December 30th, 2 to 4, and light refreshments will be served. Okay, go ahead, Tavis.
Thank you. For myself. A few years ago, Is this working? Hello? Yes,
Yes.
all right.
Yep.
A few years ago, this board was presented with a site plan by Accidents Happen Auto Body over on 109. For those that don't remember, the proposal was a 48 by 48 structure parallel to the town barn. I think Brad knows this property pretty well. At the time, the current owner was leasing from Harriman. That since has become his property. Through a short series of events, it was determined there was some diesel in the soil on the property that held construction up for quite a few years. In the interim, the owner has decided that for any number of personal reasons, a 48 by 48 is not the preferred structure for his business, and is proposing, instead of the freestanding 48, I know why Randy complains about this, the freestanding 48 by 48 structure, they are proposing instead a 35 by 35 addition to the side of the existing structure. So this, from current regulation standards, would be removing a 48 by 48 Munson building, i.e. a steel-sided building, replacing it with a 35 by 35 vinyl siding clad addition. It maintains the required number of parking spaces from the previous planning board approval. It complies with setbacks and or can be verified to comply with setbacks. And it still is able to meet the DOT driveway and stormwater concerns that were addressed at that original approval. So why am I putting this in front of you instead of them? One, didn't know how long tonight was going to go, but the first thing the board needs to do procedurally is determine if the change is a substantive change requiring a new public hearing for this change to the plan, to which I will turn around in circles. And as guidance, I would suggest 35 by 35 is smaller than 48 by 48. The stormwater regulations are no further, are not changed from the original approval. The parking is not changed from the original approval. You have a proposed structure, a proposed addition that is more conforming with the architectural design standards that were guidelines at the time but now required. So from a regulation standpoint, nothing is changing. In fact, it's less impact than the original planning board approval, but that's something the board would have to decide on its own as to whether or not this is a substantial change warranting a new public hearing or not.
What's the origin of its use?
Origin of its use is office and additional workspace. It's not going to have garage doors.
Where does the use come from? I was on the ZBA when we approved this.
The use is the auto body use that got the approval for expansion and use in the residential zone. So the proposal is a smaller square footage than the approved square footage from the original.
Is there any issue with?
Well, different place and slightly different configuration. This will not have garage doors in it where 4 doors were proposed before. This is just covered workspace for the existing shop.
And it's not as noticeable to people driving by.
So is the stormwater configuration going to change along with the pervious?
No. Impervious decreases because you're going from 48 by 48 to 35 by 35.
I know, but they're still going to probably put tar around it.
Why are you asking us?
Because the board approved a site plan showing 48 by 48. And the board needs to determine if this is substantially different enough from the approved plan to warrant a new public hearing.
That is not a decision that the planner and the code officer can make on?
No.
You require the planning board's input?
Re-
I'm just asking.
Let me turn that around. I would expect people to be asking me questions if I made my own opinion and issued a building permit for this, knowing that the site plan approved by the board looked like something else. The question is this substantially different enough where the impervious areas remain the same? Honestly, they remain effectively the same as existing condition, with probably less change to stormwater runoff patterns by putting the addition where underneath the proposed addition, as you see on the site plan, is already parking. So it's already parking and drive-by area.
I understood.
And they're, instead of, I mean, really nothing is changing with stormwater.
What's it going to cost this guy to come here? Money-wise?
It's going to be at least a $200 application plus a $300 public notice plus a butters plus the time it takes.
Go back to ZBA for?
That would be a determination that staff would make. At this point, I don't see why it would need to go back to ZBA because they're proposing less than they had before.
So can you point out what the building's location is going to be? You got this, was it here before in the middle, and then now it's off to the side, or what?
This is what's there right now. When the planning board approved site plan, it was adding this 48 by 48 over here. So this would no longer happen, and this square right here would become the addition, which is what that's attempting to show.
It's our
Keep the
decision.
setbacks, right?
So it's an addition to the existing structure?
Correct, as
And,
opposed to a new freestanding metal structure.
Okay.
Is this time critical for the individual? Our decision, time critical?
I can't speak for the individual. There's a reason when I said it needs to go back to the board that they very quickly came up with a plan showing the change so the board could make a decision.
Really, I'd really like to hear from the applicant.
I don't know what the applicant would add.
Underneath the proposed thing, there were hazardous wastes and things like that.
I can answer some of that if you'd like.
I didn't get a full report, but my understanding is that in this area there was a buried tank and there were fuel pumps. When the tank and pumps left, there became diesel in the ground.
So therefore, this is moving it away from a hazardous waste area and therefore providing.
Correct. The interim between planning board approval and now has largely been consumed by DES testing and soil testing. And my understanding is DES reserves the right, even if this building were to be built, to continue to excavate under to make sure that the contamination was controlled. Instead, the applicant said, let's move away from it altogether so that that can continue its natural course while I get the added workspace I need inside.
Brad, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I can add some information because all the cleanup and everything came under me here. The site through DES supervision, through everything, went through the Superfund and everything for the cleanup of it, has been completed to DES satisfaction. All the contaminated soils have been removed that are over the limits there. So it's a clean site there now. So the area where the fuel pumps were and where that one tank was have been, soil's been removed, replaced. It's all gone out to the certified disposal areas there for that type of soil. And so it is classified as a clean site now. So just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Can I ask you, Brad, are you familiar with this proposal?
Am I what?
Are you familiar with this proposal?
No, this is the first I've heard that they're
Okay.
changing from standalone to an addition, so.
Okay.
Well, it could be also, it's just taken too freaking long, and through COVID and everything, and now, now his needs are different. He doesn't need a big building now, he needs a smaller building. It could be as simple as that.
Go ahead, Peter.
I move to waive the need for a public hearing for this change in construction.
Okay, that's a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to waive the applicant coming back for a site plan approval.
Could I add to that? But there are ordinances that have been passed, such as the lighting ordinance, that they would need to follow for the new building.
Presumably, nothing else is changing on the site plan
Maintain all other
approval.
conditions of approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, and I'm pretty sure we addressed the lighting issue when
So all previous conditions of site plan approval remain in place. The only change is the change of the location of the building and its size.
Okay,
To put forward. So for clarification, it's not just moving that no public hearing is required. This is not a substantial change warranting a new public hearing? Is that?
not, yeah, okay, so do I have to do a roll call again?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. A motion has been made to not require a new site plan,
A new hearing.
new hearing by the applicant.
Site plan application and public hearing.
Okay, new site plan application and public hearing. Okay, Doug? Are you in?
I vote
favor?
aye.
Okay, Doug votes aye. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Von votes aye. Peter Goodwin?
Aye.
Peter votes aye. Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Mike votes aye. John Thurston?
Aye.
John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, Brad is abstaining, and I'll vote aye. So that passes 6 with one abstention.
Require a new public hearing. Are there any conditions the board might want to?
That all the prior conditions are maintained. Well, no, of course it has to meet the setbacks. To get a building permit.
Does the board want to require an as-built, or are you going to trust setback compliance to the
Can't
code
trust.
officer the ways that?
We can't trust.
So you'd like to add a condition to the existing conditions for an as-built to be completed?
I think that's only safe, no?
An as-built, I think, is fair
Yeah.
after the whole thing is done.
If it were a lot further from that rear lot line, I wouldn't have any compunction about it, but it looks.
Well, that's an interesting discussion, because the other thing that happened the same year, but later in the year, the town changed how corner lot setbacks are measured. So if you look at the original approval, it calls this easterly, horrible, this easterly line a rear setback at 25 feet. The current definition of corner lot says that Beck is a front, 109A is a front, and all other lines are to be treated as side lines. So this plan shows a 25-foot setback when 20 is the current requirement. If you take the distance, and this is what Randy was sort of snickering about, and I agree to an extent, if you scale the full-size plan and measure from the property line to the building and subtract the setback, there is room. But I would suggest that an as-built be done just to verify setback compliance. And the as-built can be done at the foundation stage, so it's not completely built, et cetera.
To verify the current setback.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've been very cooperative in this case, but I do think we need to cover ourselves with an as-built. Just for the future.
Yes.
Would you agree that the foundation certification would address that? So foundations, when you tell the.
Are you involved in this?
Not yet.
I just got it up today, it's like you guys.
So you will become involved in this.
Well, what?
All right.
Okay, so for clarity.
Nice
so,
that you were here.
It gives me some additional confidence.
Well, and I asked him to stay because underneath all of these blue boxes are every reference to Norway Plains being involved. I want it to be clear to the board that Norway Plains did not present this document to you.
He just happened to be here.
He just happened to be here.
Understood.
And I did it to make sure I didn't overstep nor the board.
No, there's a considerable degree of confidence knowing that this is the way it's
You might
going.
have a copyright infringement on your logo.
I know. Thanks, Vaughn. Thanks.
Sure.
So I would suggest the board make a motion to require a foundation certification as part of this.
Okay, and that wasn't on the original one? The original approval?
I didn't see, it wasn't spelled out as a foundation certification.
It also was substantially more distant from the side lot lines. So it probably didn't need
Okay,
more.
does somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Peter's made the motion to require a setback survey. And motion has been made and seconded by Mike Hodder. Okay, Doug?
I vote aye.
Doug is in favor of this motion. Von Dugan?
Aye.
And Von is in favor of the motion. Peter Goodwin?
Aye.
Peter's in favor. Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Mike Hodder is in favor. John Thurston?
Aye.
John is in favor. Brad? You're
Abstain.
abstaining. Okay, Brad abstains, and I will vote in favor of the motion. So that motion carries 6 with 1 abstention. Okay, any other little gems?
I'm just,
Open the door, and it's only 9 o'clock. I've got enough caffeine for midnight, so we could go for a while if you want.
Hi, Randy.
No,
I'm, s-
Here, Andy.
okay. Okay, does
Could've been
anybody
like
have
last time.
anything else?
well, to that,
Let's do the minutes.
I mean,
I would
when,
suggest a correction in the minutes, even though I wasn't here, that the date is incorrect.
Yes, yes,
The ones online correctly refer to 12/6. There's a later mismention in the minutes that you have a copy of, suggesting that one of the public hearings was continued to 1/3. That was a discussion later changed in last meeting to 12/1. But these are the minutes of 12/6.
I was just reflecting back on the application that we just gave to us, so I'm looking at what becomes of the area that the building wasn't proposed for. What happens to the area?
The way it is presently.
It's the way it is presently.
Doesn't change.
Okay, so the minutes of November 1st, which is actually December 6th.
They're draft, yeah.
That opens an entire door, doesn't it? All kinds of things can change.
Yeah, right. Okay, we've already talked about 2 changes. Anyone have any others?
What was the second change?
There's a reference to the third or something.
Right here.
Way in the back, yeah.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to accept these?
So moved.
Seconded.
The motion has been made and seconded to accept the minutes. Doug?
Yeah, I couldn't hear some of that discussion, so I'll abstain.
You're abstaining? Oh, okay. Von Dugan?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Von votes aye. Peter Goodwin? Peter is abstaining. Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Mike votes aye. John Thurston?
Aye.
John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
Aye.
Brad votes aye. Let's see. Yes, I think you were here, so Julie?
I vote yes.
You vote yes. Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so the minutes passed with 5 in favor and 2 abstentions.
Yeah, it
Because I
doesn't
wasn't here.
count. It's 6.
6 to 1. Yeah, that's, yes, that's right. 6 to 1. Okay, all right, very good. Okay,
Move to adjourn?
I hope so.
Sir.
Have a happy holiday, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Travis.
Roll call.
Oh, yes.
Okay, another roll call to,
Oh, no.
to adjourn the meeting. Okay, Doug?
Aye.
Okay, Doug votes aye. Vaughn?
Aye.
Vaughn votes aye. Peter?
Aye.
Peter votes aye. Mike?
Yes.
Mike votes aye. John?
Aye.
Voted yes, yes.
John votes aye. Brad Harriman?
Aye.
Brad votes aye, and I will vote in favor of adjourning the meeting. And thank you all very much. Yes, and Merry Christmas.
Gotcha.
everyone.